How are y'all doing today? Hope you're well. So I was sitting in meditation this morning, and the words that came through to me were don't just take what you can get, like the bits that you can get, receive what you deserve. And my mind immediately went to placing that in the context of relationship, just because relationship, I think, brings up so much around our self-worth and what we believe we're deserving of receiving or not deserving of receiving. But I think this whatever this saying that came through this morning, it can relate to any part of our life, right? It can be in relationship to not just relationship, but work, purpose, abundance, source, God. We've been living in a society that is very much based on scarcity and not enough, and you need to prove yourself, and so we kind of we take what we can get, which is kind of settling for a kind of mediocrity rather than really fully going, no, this is what I'm worthy and deserving of receiving in my life. And I'm not saying this from a greedy perspective of like, I deserve a Ferrari and a million, like multi-million mansion. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about what is your birthright and what is it like to live. This does always tie back to worth, right? Because it's not just taking scraps. It's not being the beggar that's like, will you love me? Will you give me enough attention? Will this job be good enough? It's actually like we're now in a time where we get to really flourish and thrive versus survive. We're coming out of the paradigm of survival and scarcity and not enough and lack and division. And we're coming into a time of really embodying our full selves. And when you embody your full self, it's like, okay, I'm in my worth. So I am deserving of receiving. And that doesn't mean that that we're entitled to think that. It's just that source, God, creator of all that is innately and naturally abundant and unconditionally loving. And we've just been taught and told that, like, no, you can only have a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And so I want to dive into, what does it mean? What does it mean to not just take scraps, to not just take what you can get? What does that actually mean? And where is that coming from? But then what does it look like to fully receive what you deserve? And that's not a elitist thing, right? We all deserve love and respect and integrity and honesty and truth and connection and home and all of these things, appreciation. So yeah, these are some of the things that we're going to touch upon today, and we'll see where it takes us as always. Let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So, of course, I'm going to lean a little bit into more the women that are listening or watching right now. And of course, it's going to pertain to men as well. And also it's going to pertain to things in your life that are not just about relationship. But the reason why I want to just begin with romantic relationship is because, firstly, is what I've been doing in my work for the last 15 years, even though I'm shifting slightly, but there's so much that's wrapped up in relationship because it brings up all of our stuff. And I think I think it's safe enough to say that most of us, I can't say all, but I would say a majority of human beings at one point or another felt that their worth and their good enoughness and just their sense of self was triggered, compromised, put to the test, pushed away, pushed down. Something around that at some point or another has come up in your romantic relationships. It's really hard for it not to, right? Because again, romantic relationship will show us what our relationship is to ourselves, to love, to men, to women, to God, even to source. And this whole concept or notion of you are deserving of receiving what you truly desire. So, taking the scraps, how many of you have been in a situationship, that's the term going around, where it's like, it's not what you really want. That the I'm going to speak to the women that have been with a man. I'm just going to use that terminology, but please insert whatever feels right for you, right? Whatever pertains to you personally. And you're with a man and he's not really showing up. He's not really giving you presence. He's not committing. He's not putting 2 feet in. At worst, he's not even like being honest. Maybe he's being unfaithful, whatever it is. But whatever it is, it's not aligning with you. And you can feel it's either triggering anxiety or it's triggering avoidance. It's triggering something where your nervous system says, I don't feel safe in this situation. And that doesn't have to equate you're being abused. It just means I'm not in an authentic, genuine container where there's mutual respect. And whatever reason, he could be just young or not have the capacity or not emotionally intelligent and mature or can't, like I said, can't commit for whatever reason. And yet you're putting up with it. You're staying. And at worst, within that situation is you're staying and you're telling yourself a story that his behavior is because you're not good enough, because you're not sexy enough, not beautiful enough, not lovable enough, not smart enough. So you're doing something wrong. Something must be wrong with you. You're messing it up. You're not saying the right thing. You're not doing the right thing. You're not wearing the right thing. How many of you have been there? Because I've certainly spoken to hundreds of women that have been there. And it's this kind of like, sometimes women put up with this behavior, and I'm sure men do. They have their own version as well. But women will put up with behavior that they know isn't right, but they'll put up with it because it's like, well, it's the best that I can get. Or it's something is better than nothing. And that's actually, I have to disagree with that. I get why women will say it's better than nothing. And I've been there myself. I'm not going to lie. I've been there myself. I've been like, well, there's not a whole lot of option around here. It's either I'm alone or I'm this, and these are the good things, but these are the things that cause me pain. And of course, any and all relationships, whatever, if they're committed or not committed, there's always something to learn. If we don't fall into the victimized role, there's always something to learn and to grow and evolve through. Like you can always take whatever they say, lemons, and turn it into lemonade, right? There's always something that we can gain. It's not lost time ever if we choose to take it and use it consciously, right? But we've been there where it's like, okay, I'm really compromising myself here. And I get that there's sometimes the fear of being alone, or maybe you've been single for a long time and you don't want to continue to be single, or you're still seeking for something. But what happens is that if we keep on saying yes to something that actually is not in resonance with who we are, it's not in resonance with what we want, it's not in resonance and in alignment with our non-negotiables, we are delaying the process because we're saying yes to something that isn't what we truly need and want, right? And so, but the deeper underrooted part could be, well, you're not worthy or deserving of anything better. Or, your father never loved you more than that. So that's all you know. And that's what you should put up with. You're lucky that you even have attention. You're lucky that guy's even giving you attention or taking you out on a date or sleeping with you or what, this is the mentality. This is what I've heard so many times over and over and over again, but it's not coming from a place of worth. It's not coming from a place of, do I choose him? It's coming from, does he choose me? Does he want me? Does he like me? Does he want to spend time with me? Is he going to call me? Is he going to text me? Do you see how your power is so outside of yourself? Because society in many ways has said, take what you can get the scraps. Better to have crumbs than nothing. And it takes a lot to come to that place of like, wait a second. No. I don't have to live in a paradigm of scarcity and lack and not good enough. And that it's a total false illusion and lie that I'm not deserving of actually being treated well. I'm not deserving of actually receiving what is my birthright, which is love and integrity and authenticity and honesty and pure and true connection that doesn't have any manipulation or games or whatever. Yeah. So moving into receiving what I'm deserving of. It's so, as I say that, it's like, okay, those were the words that came through. And so I'm going to say them because I'm just going to trust what comes through. But words have, they're tricky because they can have a lot of connotation, right? So even deserving can come a lot from either elitism or praise and punishment, or, the whole thing of, if you're good, God loves you. And if you're bad, you're going to be sent to hell. And God hates you, doesn't love you at all. It's just, there's so much intertwined and enmeshed with other things that shouldn't be crumpled all in together in one messy ball of yarn, right? The simplest truth is that you are a creation of source, and you are loved unconditionally, and your essence is love. And so that is your birthright, just simply by existing, not even just your human birthright. That is your eternal, infinite soul birthright. It is who you are and what you're made of, right? So to have this belief that we're not deserving of who we are, of what we're made of, it's almost like it would be as weird as saying you're not deserving of having skin. You don't deserve to have skin. It's like, well, but that's a part of my body, right? It comes with skin. I can't remove it. It would be an illusion for me to believe I don't have skin right now. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to put it into like a real, tangible, practical term where it seems ridiculous that you wouldn't be a body without skin. Likewise, you wouldn't be a soul without love. You're born deserving of skin. So therefore, you were born deserving of love. If I'm going to go on with that analogy, I hope you get me, that this isn't too weird. So it's a real like shift in mentality, in the way that we perceive things, and to come out of the role of victimization, which we've again have been indoctrinated into quite strongly for a long time, especially if our education and even old ways of parenting aren't interested in who you are authentically. They're not interested in your sovereignty and your autonomy. They're interested in you following and doing what you're told and playing by the rules. And there's so many rules of society that are kind of constantly changing, but they're still rules of the should. You should, you shouldn't. And you know that whenever you're using that language, you are outside of yourself and you're within the paradigm and construct of somebody else's opinions. So coming into sovereignty is also coming into, I get to choose, and I get to be mindful and aware of how I'm relating to myself and how I'm relating to source itself, and therefore how I'm relating to others in my life, be it another man or a woman or a coworker or boss or family member or friend or a child or whatever it is. Am I going to play the victim role? Am I going to play the character of I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy enough and I'm not deserving of what I truly want and desire? Because also maybe, you haven't been shown that you do get to have that. And so you might be like a shot in the dark, being like, well, Corinne, I've never had that. So how can I even know if I'm deserving or not deserving? You are deserving of it because you are made of love. Just you are deserving of having skin when you're born. It's really that simple. And when we come from the embodiment of, I get to choose to not play the character that society has wanted me to play, and I'm going to have to go against the grain and against the habit and against the belief systems that maybe you formed an identity around. And I'm going to come into this place of, you know what? I am deserving of receiving that which is my birthright. So that's love. That's abundance in all forms, not just financial. Even just the act of receiving, we're not so good at that. Because it's vulnerable, because we have to open ourselves, because we have to allow ourselves to believe again that we're good enough and worthy and deserving of being loved by God's source, creator of all that is, and our parents and our friends and our community and the world and the collective at large. That we belong. So many people feel like they don't belong. They don't belong on this planet. They don't belong to their family. They don't belong to their friends. They don't belong to themselves. They don't belong to their partners. And what I mean by belonging, it's like that, it's the oneness that we're used to outside of this realm. It's inclusion, not by way of fitting in, which means you have to change who you uniquely and authentically are and fit in by, wearing the Levi's and the white shirt and, being in the cubicle as an example, right? No, you get to be your colorful self. Whatever your own unique signature is, you get to be that. You get to be included for that. You get to belong for that. You get to be loved for that. But in order to not just take scraps and actually receive what we deserve, we have to stop saying, yes, I'll take the scraps. Yes, I'll put up with that behavior because at least it's some kind of attention and love and affection and intimacy. It's not good enough. And it's when I say it's not good enough, it's not at all to judge and put down the person that isn't showing up good enough for you. It just simply means, you know what? They do not have the capacity right now. If they're not showing up with integrity, if they're not choosing you, if they're not putting 2 feet in, if they're not being honest, if they're not showing up authentically, it has nothing to do with you as long as you're taking responsibility for your stuff and you're showing up with authenticity and integrity and self-responsibility, and you're not playing out a drama or triggering or projecting. Like, let's say you're as clear a vessel as possible, and I put that in quotations because we're never just like totally pure, right? We're human, we have our stuff, but at least if we're taking self-responsibility for our stuff, we're holding it, right? And there's a purity to that because I'm not lashing it out or projecting it or pasting it onto somebody else. I'm going, yeah, okay, this is my stuff. This is, this is the stuff that I need to still look at and love and heal and alchemize. I'm holding it, right? So let's say you're doing that and the other person can't show up in the same way. They can't show up to the table and meet you halfway and reciprocate what you're putting in, in their own way, but to reciprocate that. It's just simply not within their capacity. And so then it has nothing to do with you. And it most certainly doesn't have anything to do with your worth. Could it have something to do with your behavior if you're not taking self-responsibility for it? Sure. But that doesn't mean you're not worthy. Again, I know I've talked a lot about this and I talk a lot about it with my clients. You are not what you do. You are who you are. Sometimes your behavior can be evolved and worked on. Sometimes, yeah, we need to take responsibility for the way that we react to something. Sure, this is the school of life of being human, and we have emotions and we have reactions and we have triggers and we have wounds. We have our fears and insecurities. It's all a beautiful mess, right? And the beautiful mess is here to help us stretch and grow. Yeah. So it's never directly connected to your worth. That needs to be so profoundly important and clear within yourself that you are worthy no matter what. Even if you've done something that is just such a heinous, horrible thing, your worth from the eyes of God and Source is always intact. However, we probably don't do stuff like that if we're not living in our worth, right? A lot of the time, terrible acts of violence come from pain, come from hurt, come from feeling, oh, I've been rejected, I'm not wanted, I'm not loved, I'm not included, I don't belong. It always comes from a source of pain and hurt, a wounding, an open bleeding wound. I can't even say scar because it's still bleeding if one is behaving in that way. There's always a reason for our behavior, but our baseline, the canvas behind the painting, will always, always be worthy. Will always be lovable and significant enough and good enough and intelligent enough and worthy of existence, because otherwise Source wouldn't have created us. If we weren't worthy of existing, we wouldn't exist, period. So that has to be the baseline. That has to be the foundation. That has to be the canvas behind the painting. What you paint on the canvas, that is our responsibility. And, maybe we're set up in a way that our personality is a certain way, our life experiences kind of happen in a certain way because there's something that our soul is like, I want to paint this kind of painting this time around. This is the mood. This is the feeling. This is the trajectory. This is the movement of growth that I want to experience in this lifetime. So I might need to have the father that abandons me. I might need to have the divorce. I might need to have this injury, this challenge, this insecurity, this beliefs, whatever it is, it's like all beautifully orchestrated for you to get what your soul is like. I've come to learn this course in this life. And I think for pretty much every human being right now, especially because we're coming out of these massive cycles, massive cycles, all of the like the astrological cycle, the Kali Yuga cycle, the just so many different cycles are coming into a like alignment and almost like a zero still point to begin again, to begin a new cycle. And so I think pretty much every human being, the cycle that we're wrapping up is that you're not connected to source, that you're not worthy and lovable, that you're not powerful, that you're insignificant, or you're just a speck of blue in the middle of like, quantum universes. No, you matter. You matter. Because everything is inside and out and outside and in, a fractal within a fractal. So every little tiny thing matters because it is a part of source and creation and consciousness and love itself. Don't let them tell you that you're insignificant. You matter because you exist. You belong because you exist. You're worthy because you exist. And if you're worthy because you exist, then you deserve love. So the human self needs to kind of catch up with this, right? Because the human self has the story, has the narrative, has the trauma, has the wounding. My father wasn't emotionally available. He didn't love me. My mother wasn't nurturing. She was hard on me. Whatever the story and the narrative is. But what if you were to look at it all as, how does this show me, teach me, invite me to love myself more? And to maybe even have empathy for others that are also struggling, that have also had their trauma and their wounding and their stories and their challenges. Because that's part of the new paradigm, is coming into our worth, really coming into our authenticity, not in some like Instagram, self-help kind of way, but like you get to just be you. And not just the human you, but you get to be your soul you, right? You get to wear all of your bright colors. You don't have to be stuck in black and white. And as we do that and we settle in and embody more our true essence, which will naturally and innately bring us into a state of love, we will have the natural impulse to want to be of service to one another. There will be the natural impulse to have empathy. Selfishness comes from survival. Survival comes from living in fear. Living in fear comes from not being connected to who we are and to the source of our creation itself. When we're connected to source, when we're at home within ourselves, when we're in our worth, when we know what we're deserving of receiving, we don't need to be afraid. And if we're not afraid, we won't survive. And if we're not in survival, we won't be selfish, right? See how it all kind of zooms in and zooms out again. Spirals in and spirals back out. So it's a really beautiful time, but we have to move through that transition. And part of that transition is letting go, like saying, no, I'm not going to just take the scraps of life, because actually there's so much more. And again, I don't mean greed. I mean, the true essence of abundance is that there's more than enough. And that more than enoughness begins with there's more than enough love in all of existence for you to be loved. And that you're deserving of loving yourself. You're deserving of allowing yourself to open up to receiving love and knowing that that love isn't going to hurt you or reject you or abandon you. That you deserve that. And you don't need to put up with anything less than that. And that means that you have to do that for yourself. Because if you're not doing that for yourself, you will let other people get away with it. And again, no blame, judgment, or shame on them. They have their own inner journey. They have their own healing. They have their own awakening to do. Meeting people where they're at and understanding their capacity so you don't have to take things personal is so helpful in unraveling the messes that we get ourselves into. I just keep on coming back to what's going to change the world is if we can just be so much more kind and gentle with ourselves and with one another. So easy to get into the drama. It's so easy to get into stories. It's so easy to get into arguments or conflict or competition. I see it even, hearing a little bit like the drama at my daughter's school. Oh, and she did this and she said that and this, she acted like this and she was mean and she's a bully here. And what I will speak to with my daughter is, yeah, the way that that person is showing up, like that's not kind, right? It's not nice. And we have two ways that we can respond to it. One is to not get into the reactivity and to fight back with the same behavior. So it's to show up differently and to be the change you want to see in the world. But the second aspect to that that's really important is asking ourselves the question, or even just bringing this fact, I would call it a fact, into our awareness, is there's always a reason for somebody's behavior. Always. So that bully has pain. That kid that's like being mean has pain. And it doesn't condone their behavior, but it gives us even an undercurrent, even if it's a silent undercurrent of compassion, that is a human being going through their own story, going through their own growing pains, and that they deserve love too. They deserve connection too. And often the thing that hurts us most is when there's that feeling that there's a loss of connection to love. And this is why so much of the work goes back to our inner child experience and what we believed was true, which wasn't necessarily the truth. We can make a story because we take everything personal because we don't have the human expanded awareness yet in that moment to understand and be able to intellectualize and digest what is actually going on a larger level, right? We just don't have the capacity as babies. So a lot of adults are unfortunately still in that kind of tiny brain, the reptilian part of the brain, even that's like can't even comprehend what's going on beyond what they believed was the truth, which is most often a lie, an illusion. I don't even say it's not like a manipulated lie. It's just not the truth. So, for example, a child that was put into daycare when they were really young and they still needed their mama. They could go, oh, my parents didn't want me. They didn't love me. Something must be wrong with me. I'm not good enough if I've just been sent over here and these strangers, these aren't my family. I'm not getting the skin to skin that I need or the love and attention and bond and healthy attachment with my parent. I'm being put in this room with other crying babies and, adults that I don't know. And they don't have the pheromone that reminds me, oh, you're my mom or you're my dad. And so the story that they could make is, yeah, my parents don't want me. But the greater truth is maybe they had you when they were too young. Maybe they had to work and they had no choice. And it was so painful for them to drop you off every day in that kindergarten, in that daycare, and not be with you. But they had to because otherwise there wasn't going to be food on the plate and a roof over your head. It's so sad that we live in a world that even exists. It's ridiculous and it's so sad. And it's so wrong. It is so incredibly wrong. And I hope that we're moving back towards community and support and natural life, not just living to work and working to be a slave. And it's not what we came here for. It's not what we came here for. And this is part of the liberation, is to see the illusion and to see everything that comes with that and choose, nope, not going to do that because I am deserving of receiving what is my natural birthright, both in human form and in soul form. I'm not putting up with the bullshit anymore. I'm not going to choose that. I'm not going to say yes to that. I'm not going to just take the scraps, right? But going back to the example, do you see that it's like the child can't see the larger picture of your parents did what they had to do? And some might say, oh, okay, no, I had a perfect childhood. We were whatever. We had money, we had wealth, we had this, we had parties with this, but my father was emotionally totally vacant. And so therefore you think something is wrong with you. He didn't have the capacity because whatever his story was. So it's like the Russian dolls. There's always another one inside the other one, inside the other one. And that's like the ancestral trauma. And so part of coming to the end of these cycles is saying no more. But it does mean letting go of an identity, whether that identity is I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm a victim, I'm poor, I'm not lucky, I don't get what I want. Whatever those stories are and those beliefs, pay attention to them. And then you get to choose, do I want to continue playing this character, having this identity? And yeah, the ego likes to know and be and do what it's familiar with. But at some point, you're going to have to go, whoa, I'm going to be really uncomfortable here, but I'm going to drop the mask. I'm going to drop the suit. And maybe for a period of time, it served me. It helped me to cope. But we're not here to cope anymore. We're not here to survive anymore. We're here to thrive. We're here to be free. We're here to be who we truly are. So there is going to be a no man's land in between where you have to let go of an old identity and go, I don't know who I am. And that terrifies me. But allow yourself to be vulnerable enough, courageous enough. The heart comes from courage, right? Cœur. Be courageous enough to be vulnerable enough to receive what your soul truly, truly knows you're deserving of. And your soul knows that because your soul is an aspect of source and God knows, of course, you're worthy. Of course, you get that. So just notice for yourself, where are you settling for scraps? Where are you just taking what you can get? But knowing, ooh, I'm really compromising myself here, or I'm not happy, or this really triggers my anxiety. I don't feel safe. I don't feel seen or heard or understood. And your first point of reference is, am I doing that for myself? Because if you're doing it for yourself, you won't be trying to get that from the other, and you won't go into greater kind of pull me, push you, whatever kind of cycles. And you'll be able to choose, do I choose this person? Do I choose this relationship? Do I choose this job? Do I choose this home? Do I choose this way of life? Do I choose these friends? Do I choose this food? Do I choose this drink? Everything's a choice. And every choice has a cause and effect, has a repercussion, right? Again, not coming at all from judgment, good, bad, success, failure, praise, punishment, going to heaven, going to hell. No, you're loved no matter what. But the repercussions are you going to create more suffering for yourself, or are you going to create freedom for yourself? So all of this comes from, how do I take care of myself? What is a choice that is loving and caring towards myself? Right? Drinking a glass of water instead of a cup of coffee in that moment because you're dehydrated is an act of self-love, self-care. Just as an example, if you go for the coffee, it's okay. Don't reprimand yourself. You're not a terrible hurt person that's going to go to hell. Or like we spin out into all of these silly stories, right? But take self-responsibility. Make the conscious choice. Choose what you allow into your space, into your body, into your consciousness, into your being. This ties into boundaries. And one of my favorite quotes around boundaries, I think it was Buckminster Fuller, I believe. Yeah, I believe it was Buckminster Fuller, that said, boundaries are drawing a sacred circle around yourself and choosing what you allow to come into that space. Not out of defense, out of choice. I welcome you in. Oh no, there's something that it's not in alignment, it's not in resonance, there's compassion there, but no, there's a boundary here. This boundary is an act of self-love and self-care. I get to choose. And choice can be so incredibly empowering. It can also be overwhelming, but it can be so empowering. So just notice, that's the invitation. Just notice, where are you taking scraps? Where do you no longer want to take scraps because you think this is as good as I can get? And it might mean you have to make some pretty radical choices in your life. And it might mean spending some solitary time with yourself. But great, get to know yourself more. Fall in love with yourself. Take care of yourself. Show up for yourself the way that you would like a man or a woman or anyone else to show up in your life. Be that for yourself first. And then all you need to do is open up to what you're already deserving of receiving. It's just what has already been there. Just sources like waiting for you to open up to it. So there's nothing that you need to do to become a better version of yourself. You just need to come back to who you truly are. And then you can unfold and open, and just like the blossom, the rose that just naturally absorbs the sun, you get to do that too. The sun will always be there. He's waiting to shine upon you. He's just waiting for you to open up to fully receive it. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. Bye. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.